take a brief moment to think about who is your favorite artist. Who is the artist whose work that you are the most excited to find more of? Who is the artist that you are looking the most forward to seeing more work from? Now, enjoy that little vision. I want to ask you why none of your own paintings that you imagine or are thinking of came to mind. Why aren't you your own favorite artist? I don't mean that as in, why aren't you the best ever? I mean, why aren't you taking inspiration from those very things you just thought of to bring your art into alignment, to bring your art towards something that you truly like? When you think of the question of discovering your style or becoming yourself, a lot of focus is put on this idea that you need to turn inwards and not to think about what's going on around you. But as an artist, your biggest treasure is really how you value your own perspective. And so I want to share with you how I found myself in looking out at the world and not by looking inwards. What actually made me be able to do the studies that were truly necessary in order for me to grow into the artist that I am today. My name is Jonathan Livslust, and I worked in the animation industry for a bit over 10 years now. This is all my personal work, and I want you to know that I really like it. I love my own paintings, especially my personal paintings that I do in these spare moments of free time. I love them because they contain so much of my life that you could never know. Walks in the town, things that I have admired, things that I'm thinking of, things that I'm dreaming of, or things that I'm remembering. And so these paintings are almost a kind of pocket of time for me that I can look at and basically relive my life, but not through the eyes of what really happened, but rather how it truly felt. Like, this painting is in truth inspired by walks in the mountains and looking back down on this far path. I would often go alone. But I'm not here to talk about these paintings and what they mean to me and their ideas. I'm here to really suggest to you what you need to do in order to enjoy your work as much as I enjoy mine. I want to share with you a quote from Shigeru Mobius, who is a fantastic and famous artist whose work has inspired so many artists for decades and will likely inspire artists for centuries. He's asked about advice, and so he says the following: I am often asked to give advice to students in brief conversation, but there's just simply so much to cover. There's too much to cover. So it all comes down to this single phrase: be what you must and do your best. That is encouraging, right? But it's really meant like this: you will have to become what you must. You must be it, and you must do your best. And so it is really both meant to reassure you, but it's also meant to let you know that it is difficult. If you want to become your favorite artist, you must first take that very first step towards that goal. You must realize that this is possible. And that is difficult to actually admit, to say, no, I want to admire my own work. I want to admire the things that I make. And then saying, okay, how do I make that happen? How do I do that journey? And so you must take that first step. And it will not get any harder than that. The first step towards any goal is the hardest. After you're going, it will become easier. Not because that the struggle, the battles you're going to face will not get any bigger, but rather because in taking the steps, you grow yourself to be bigger, more capable. You will look back down at the mountain of self-discovery and see your old problems, and they will feel small. You will think, it was so easy back then. As you grow and continue down this path, you will meet allies and friends, people who believe in you, that will cheer you on from a distance. As you explore this path, You will map all the dead ends in the maze, and you will know the terrain. You'll know what is safe and what you truly need to concentrate on, what you truly need to be afraid of. Right now, before you take this step, you are alone and it's dark out there. Roar. Sounds like there's a bear. 100%. You won't know what's going to happen to you, how you are going to change. And that's why the first step is the hardest, because no one else can take it for you. Just as like no one can eat healthy or work out for you. No one can go to bed at the proper hour for you. Right now, no one is there to help you. It's just you alone. And you will go down the wrong direction. That is just a guarantee, okay? Yet each blind alley of that maze will help you discover something about yourself. Why it didn't work for you. Each step backwards will become a part of who you are, where no one can truly imitate. You will only make sense of it later when it will feel obvious. Right now, it is scary and it is hard. Expecting the journey to be easy will only make it so much harder than it already is. Just because you are at the bottom, i.e., you have nothing, should not stop you. The fact that you have no resources should not stop you. Look at it this way instead. Because you have nothing to lose by taking this action. You have nothing to lose by making this first step. Then the first step of becoming an artist who makes art that you like is to discover what you like. And I want to show you a simple exercise that I've done with my students for almost 10 years. Each time it is a surprise to me and it delights because I can really see what people bring. So the goal is really this. Instead of having, hundreds of thousands of images in your reference folder, you need to first make a selection. Because whenever you come into something like this, right, and you're going, oh, I'm going to be inspired today, I'm going to look at some paintings. Just the act of going through and looking at all of these paintings and choosing which one you want is almost a paralysis of choice. And so this choice of what you're going to look at and what wonders are you going to learn should not be part of the study itself. It is an exercise all on its own. And so I have some of my students who I've taken this exercise with. I'm teaching a class right now. And it's just this. Each student in the second session, when we are talking about how to learn from paintings, is asked the following. Please bring 10 paintings that you actually like. With no scheme, no agenda, no nothing. And in doing so, they show in a really fun way just who they are. And so here's one student who has chosen some really dramatic paintings. Like this one is one of my favorites. Here is me going to see it in Vienna many years ago. It's gorgeous and it's huge and it's so simply painted that it actually made me feel like, oh, I could do that. Not in like a, oh, I'm so good at painting, I should be able to, but just like, it's just so cool and I want to do something like that. And so it made me want to step up my standard of like how I approach painting and how I approach drawing. And all of these paintings have a lot to actually teach you about texture and composition and how you actually feel about these images. And so once you've chosen your 10 images, the goal is to learn as much as you can about them. And then we're going to go into a bit about how you can do that in just a moment. Like this painting by Craig Mullins, like I feel like this painting was so much more special than what the game it was meant for actually ended up becoming. This painting of rapture. And I guess that's part of the point, right? Like it inspires the project, it lifts it up to a higher point. And there's a lot of things you can learn from just like, digging into these things. Because you say, I want to learn how to do this. You made the choice. And then you go deeper. Here's another one from another student. And you can see that there's both a kind of creepy sensation or like one of dread, but also one of peace. And it's nice to have this difference in your choices so you can like bounce between them as you are studying them. And so it's not all darkness, unless you want to paint darkness, then you really should go all in on learning about painting dark things. Here's another one. And notice how they basically have a little theme on their own, right? Like one is more wondrous and exploratory. One has gestures and kind of like lightness to it. And all of this from just making a choice of 10 paintings. And so when you do this, you're basically creating a kind of a compass where you say, okay, these are my things that I like. And so in just going forward and saying, okay, how is this made? How does this work? When you bring that into your work, even if you choose to then paint something else entirely, because you now understand this and you've chosen, this is important to you, this is important to me, as you apply that to your work, it will feel easier. It will feel better. And when it starts to feel better and it starts to have more things, all of these things that you like, the easier it will then to actually paint more paintings, because the more that you like the painting and the higher the standard you call for yourself in your paintings, that is where things really start to move. So now you have your 10 paintings. Let's actually talk about analyzing them. And so this is a system that I developed basically from doing work in the animation industry, where you kind of have to very quickly digest a painting idea and then be able to talk about it productively. So you have to say, okay, like what is important about these paintings? And when I started teaching, it developed into this system, painting analysis. I don't have any fancy way of calling it right now. You're just asking, like a detective. You come to the painting and you say, what am I seeing? How do you know that, right? Like just like, what is the evidence that these things are happening? We will go through the process in just a moment. Then why am I looking at the point of interest? And now, like, normally when I do take on painting analysis, like the second session of the class, we have an hour to prepare for this question, because that is probably where you learn the most about the texture and the flow of the images. The third is one of narrative, which is, when does this take place? And it's such a acute idea because a painting can only exist in one moment of time. If we go back to some of these pieces here, then all of these have a certain moment that they're focusing on. And so when you have these ladies who are obviously waiting for the boats to come home, right? We see the sailors who are returning home. Maybe it's husbands, maybe it is people that promised love. And so the moment that was chosen is important because you can only choose one of them. And so in a story, it's either before the thing happens, while it's happening, and after it has happened. And when you categorize paintings as before, during, or after the action, then a lot of things become easier to digest because, for instance, if you go here with this painting of Even the Terrible, then you can see that the moment that was chosen was not one of him raging around the room and being, oh, I'm so angry, I'm gonna kill someone, I'm gonna kill my son. It is the moment as if we are a palace guard opening the door and seeing what has gone wrong. And there's nothing we can do to save our master. There's nothing we can do to help this man. And this is the point. The painting that you want to make that is the most exciting is usually at the moment of greatest tension, like this, where it's too late, everything is going wrong, or the moment of greatest release. And so you see, here's a moment of tension, right? Like the boat is coming up. And then when you have a moment of release, it could be something like this dancer who is moving and you have this big opening. And so everything is suggesting this opening of the body. And that idea of tension and release is a really powerful thing to actually keep in mind when you are working on your painting. Because if you realize that you are making a painting that features release, then everything should open up, even the trees and the leaves. You are a god of this universe that you are creating. And so you should take inspiration from someone like Orpheus, who, when he sang, even the rocks would weep. And so when you make a sad painting, you make the stones cry. And if you can figure that out for your paintings, then you will make extremely exciting paintings. And you will make paintings that have a lot more power. Then, once you have that, you start breaking them. The thing about digital files is that they exist as a kind of magic spell. They just can be replicated forever. And so you can make changes and you can see different directions. And because you are breaking and you are destroying these paintings that you love to figure out how they work, you get to learn a lot faster from your favorite paintings compared to if you're actually doing a study all the way from the ground up. And this is something that I cover extensively in my class because it is just a fun exercise. Like we would get together and then we spent an hour and a half just like breaking paintings. And afterwards, there's so many small insights about, oh, this detail meant that, or oh, this detail solved this problem. And all of these things, they become a kind of a bank in the back of your mind of solutions to problems. You map the maze. And then once you have these possibilities, when you are actually working through your own paintings, you start being able to see the future. You start being able to, in your sketch, you start being able to understand, oh, I'm going down this path. I know what this will lead. And the way that you approach your paintings will just change dramatically. So, let's take one of these paintings and break it apart. All right, I have now prepared a little demonstration for you of these ideas. And when you have your selection, it's important to kind of think about the paintings as a broader picture. So find the sketch as well, if possible. So here is the sketch for Ivan the Terrible and how he kills his son. And what I will have you notice in the sketch is that the intent is actually quite different compared to what is happening in the final. Because he is having this eye direction that is pointing outwards, right? He's looking this way, and this man is looking this way, we actually have the intention of the painting go this way. It is as if someone is standing all the way over here and is ready to strike, or they've already done it. If you look at his pose, his arm is defending the boy, his son, and it basically creates a shield towards whatever is happening here. So the intent is met here. And so if that had been the final painting, then that would not have felt very good, right? Because the intention is lost, and we'll check it in a moment. So when you find the sketch, you can actually see how the idea might have changed throughout the painting. And so when you look at it this way, then you go, okay, well, can I prove that? If I have this idea that the head turn is important because of the expression and what it does, well, let's just do that. If I paint the head and turn it away, like, I just did this terrible thing. I'm terrible. I'm even the terrible, then you see, like, immediately it's as if he's calling for help. And so with this attention, we are again looking out of the image. It's like we want to see someone there almost rushing to greet him, to come in. And so by just turning the head, I immediately learn this fact. And I can then use that if I am painting something that requires this like inner turmoil, this inner like, oh, I am so bad. Because by doing this, by having the eyes wide open, you know what happens? There's nowhere else for his gaze to go but inside himself. He is not looking at anything. If you try to trace his pupils out, right, they're going like, he's not focused. But here, definitely it feels like there's something that's happening over here. Now, when you're looking around the image, one thing that you can try to do is, of course, to just paint out details and be like, why is this here? Well, find out. Why is the window important? Well, without the window, then there's no real reason to really come up here, right? Because all of this is the same. And so with the window open, you have this little relief. Everything comes up. But what you'll notice about this window is that it doesn't really have that much contrast going on compared to what's going on here. All of this is black, his coat and everything else. There's so much contrast here. Compare this to an actual light source, and you'll notice that it doesn't really get to be that bright. It gets to be bright enough to feel like a light, but it doesn't get to actually be, bright enough that we pay attention to it. And I can prove that by just, adding a bit of white to it. If I do a bit like this and like this, immediately it gets this like hot focus where it starts pulling our attention towards here. And that's the thing that we don't want. The majority of issues in your paintings will usually just come from you adding contrast in a place where it doesn't truly belong. And then because your focus gets pulled there, it starts basically taking power from everything else in the image. And so that's the lesson that you're supposed to learn by basically studying in paintings like this, by breaking them apart and in a way not caring about them because they're not your paintings. Compare that to trying to make changes to a painting you worked on for 2 weeks. It feels like torture. Because, oh no, I spent all this time, I did all this work. And so when you have a painting that you admire, when you learn from it like this, that feels very good because you actually get to digest it. That's why I say just choose 10 and then go through 2 or 3 of them a week and really break them down and study them and look deep into them. And then you will learn more and more about them. And then you can apply those lessons to your paintings. In fact, I think that you should choose 10 paintings that are related to things that you're already working on. Don't make it something where you have to go out of your way to do this exercise. Just make it part of who you are. And then over time, you're going to grow and grow and grow, and you're going to have more capacity and understanding of how paintings work. And by doing that, you are going to be able to make paintings that no one else can. Here we have also the cloak. If I paint the chest properly, and I have a bit of light being caught on it, the same thing happens as with the window. Our attention is drawn away from the face, which is handled very sweetly. And we are left here looking at this dumb highlight. Compare that to the chair, where all the highlights are actually kind of insulated, right? That this highlight on the stool, like it doesn't get to truly be like out here. Again, look, attention immediately goes here because it's something that is light against a dark. And we're always looking for the highest point of contrast in the image. We're always looking for these little things. So if you put something like this, now the eye is too attention grabbing. It is too forceful, right? Like now we can do nothing but stare at his eye because that has the highest peak of contrast. But it's so outside of what the image is that it feels unnatural. And so that's why we are drawn to it. The next step in order for you to actually learn from your favorite paintings is to actually study how that they are made. And I want to kind of give you a system that I have had a lot of success with in my own work. Even though that I work very texturally, this idea has helped me the most, and it is the most generally useful concept for painting as far as I understand it. You want to do things in this order. You want to study the shape, then the edge, then the texture. Let me explain. If we go back to the bark plate, which I covered in my the lessons from academic art, what you'll notice is that these lines, if I do a little copy line here, so this line here going across the back, if I go here, that's the line I'm actually looking for. Do you see? Because this line is simple and it defines the shape in its simplest form. When I know where the shape is, then I can make more precise measurements. Again, so that's the line I'm looking for. And if I try to make all of these happen all at the same time, then I have to do all these like micro adjustments and measurements. And so the idea of looking for the basic shape first is to just figure out what is the biggest measurement that you can actually make. And so when you have that, you need to start with the points and saying, okay, where am I going? Where's the direction of the 2 brushstrokes? And then you do it. And as you practice, that will become easier to then do. Every time that you take a point and you go, okay, this is where I need to go, then it will become easier. And as you do it, then you can actually reflect on, oh, I missed the mark, right? Because if I do this and I intentionally miss, I go, oh no, I missed the mark. But now I know where I intended to go. So that is basically like a skill below the skill if you want to be accurate with your drawing and painting. Once you have the shape, the general outline, then you can start to render the actual forms. Because if I go in here And let me just take a section of this. So now I have the shape of this. Now what I can do is I can come in and I can actually manipulate it. So I can go and I can say, okay, where is this going? So now I just have one problem, and that is I have to render this as a demo. So hang on, let me just shut up for a moment. You know, you kind of figure it out and you go, okay, that's where the shape is. And here we have a hard edge. And it goes down like that. And as you can see, like I'm just slowly developing the shape. But I'm only worried about the shape. And this is somewhat passable. So now what I have is I have just these two differences. And as I render, I can just focus on the difference between these two. The edge that I'm looking to make is basically how fast does the shape turn away from the light. And as I'm going in here and I'm actually coming in and drawing it out, this is what will happen because I have this control from only worrying about one problem at a time. And so I can sit and I can model this out. Or I can smudge it. Once you have the shape, you can do a lot of different stuff to it. But what you notice is that what makes this shape read so clearly is this little hard edge that's happening here because it's explaining something about the back. And so I can just come in, I can carve that back out. And that immediately starts to read much faster as you process the painting than going through it with all kinds of other ways. So if you go back to something like this and you go, okay, I want to study this painting. Maybe you want to study this cloak that he's wearing, like the fabric and how there's a lot of different textures and color that are available inside. I would just suggest that instead of like trying to make a perfect copy, if you're just getting started, just take a portion. Look at this. If I copy this out, and now I have a piece of cloth that is the same. And what I want to do is I am just going to actually take this, and now I have something to render in place. So here you see, like, I have my reference right next to it, but I'm painting it in the context so that when I'm looking at these, I'm looking for the shape. So I'm looking for the general light where I'm going, okay, here we have the dark tones. We get this. And I'm just looking for these average shapes and saying, okay, where should this go? What should that be? And as you can see, like, this is really easy. And it's meant to be. It's meant to be simple. It's meant to be approachable. And as you go and you actually figure these things out, then the rendering becomes much simpler because you are thinking about it in the context of the final render. And what you'll end up with when you do this is not a study that you can show off on any platform, really, because it's not really meant like that. This is a training exercise. And so now that I know the shape, maybe I go in and I try to introduce some texture. I go, okay, we have a kind of a gradation in the light, and we can just kind of like start coloring it in. So I'm putting something like this in here. I want like a brush that has a bit of edge to it that basically leaves a bit of hole, because I'm noticing all these colors here kind of coming in and merging in various ways. And some of it is more gray when it's facing downwards, like it's a bit more loose, and some of them become more saturated. But all of them have this kind of like simple edge to it. And as you zoom out, what you'll notice is it starts to fit in. It starts to fit in within the context. And that's the important bit. When you are studying something from, from, hang on, I'm doing a demo while I'm talking. Blah. Okay, not used to that. By studying in this way, you basically start learning about how the paint actually interacts and what it actually does. And I am just trying to figure out, okay, how can I make it feel believable that this belongs to this painting? And every time I can kind of notice, okay, there's some things that I'm missing, there's things I can add, there's things I can do. And then you kind of slowly realize something about how this sleeve was done. And you don't even need to get it right. You don't even need to get it perfect, because in just doing it like this, you get to try right away. You get to change and you get to adjust things and you get to play around with it. And you can see, like, I just have my reference right next to it. I just put it over. And this way to learn is just so much more effective than first committing to doing a huge drawing study and then doing a huge, a color sketch and then doing a huge rendering effort just to learn like how to paint a sleeve, just to learn this from your favorite artist, when in digital spaces you can just go in and you can make the changes and you can basically mess up. And then once you go, oh, actually, I want to try again. And then that's where the digital art really becomes powerful, because every time I do this, every time I go in and I try this again, I can do it in a new way. I can maybe take it with a complete different brush. I can go, okay, what about this? I can go in, maybe I want to be much more chaotic and try something out there that's more aggressive. And I can say, okay, that doesn't feel the same. And then you actually get to try out your workflow 10 times. And you get to say, okay, when I do it this way, this thing happens. Because now you see, like I use these big brushes compared to before, where I was much more fine in my beginning. I was like, okay, first I need to figure out what this shape is. Then I kind of thought about the edges, and then I did the texture. But here I immediately tried to make this big textural mess. And you can see that just by doing that, I reveal an error of this way of working, because now I need to come in and I need to clean it up anyway. And so I need to come back and I need to do the shape, and then I need to do all these other things. That's the beauty of studying like this. The lesson you need to understand from repeating it over and over again is really, how can I prepare the painting surface so that I get it right the first time without having to do it over? Because here, again, I had to then restart it in order to actually get it right. And it's just focusing on the preparation and how you prepare for the next step in the step you're currently doing, where you can learn so much. So when you do it right and you get it well, just think about it like this. Good. Again. And you do it again. It's a very strong lesson. As you do this a few times with different elements, it can be skin, it can be color, you are slowly going to map out how your favorite artists, they actually did it, how they actually worked. And as you do that, you start being able to then bring that idea into your own painting. Now, your own paintings will not necessarily have the same strength, because what you saw is that it was easy for me just to paint the sleeve because I had already the final painting around it to support it. The better the painting looks, the easier it is to then go and paint something nice within it, something that doesn't feel out of place. And that's really the beauty of learning from your favorite artist, is that it slowly raises your standards. It slowly raises your expectations of what is possible. And so what is once impossible, once you've broken it down a few times, it slowly becomes possible. And then it becomes a bit easier to imagine yourself making a painting like that. And of course, there's lots of things to learn still. There's a lot of things to do and a lot of things to go on about it. But this is the foundational work, to really go within yourself and say, I want to like my own paintings. And I'm willing to do and become what I must in order to do so. And I wish you the best of luck. If you want help to apply these lessons to your own paintings, I'm currently running an art class, an online school, called Make Art That You Love, where I teach the best lessons that I've learned from helping artists make art that they truly want to see for many years. It is truly something that I wish I had when I started out. And I hope that you will check it out if you are interested. I wish you the best of luck with your paintings.